Awesome. All right. Are we cooking?
Yeah, we're cooking. OB, this is our coffee today. OB Bean Coffee Roasters. Doing good. Farm to cup.
Farm to cup.
Yeah. It's a rainy day. Fat rain. It makes it feels tropical, right?
Yeah. Remnants of a tropical storm coming up, I do believe, since it's intermittent clouds. Right. And we still got some tourists left over, kind of close to summer. They are, I would say, not freezing, but ill prepared for the rain. Man, add a little comedy to our day.
We're in San Diego. We're going to go to the beach.
Yeah, it was in the calendar, and no one was flexible enough to change it. And so, they're at the beach, and they're going to have fun. And that's like exactly what you're going to do, you know. They're wildlife stories. I have a ton of wildlife stories. So the first time I saw a dolphin in the wild was in Santa Cruz, right? And I was like, whoa, that's a fin. And I was like, oh my God, it's probably a shark, And but he's like, no, those are dolphins. I was like, oh, okay. And it was only for like a nanosecond that I saw it, right? And then I was in Buds. It was like very first day. And it was Santa Ana. I just remember it was just like bright sun, bright blue. And I could see the waves breaking out, beyond like my barracks room. And I look out there and I just see like all of these like kind of like gray matter like moving in the waves, and brought up Santa Cruz. I was like, oh, that's probably like barber seals, but that's kind of like a lot of them. They seem to be almost like swimming like choreographed. And I was like, oh wait, those are dolphins. And I was just like standing there, and the instructors come through and they kind of like, they go into your room and the room are so clean. It's like insane how clean they are. Shine decks, like shine shoes, just immaculate, right? And they walk in there, and they find some random piece of sand and they're, all right, you guys didn't even clean it all. And they just start taking, this is back in the 90s, so things are a little bit different. So they just start ejecting like your mattresses and headboards and pillows and clothes like off the third deck into the, they just, so I'm just waiting to get like destroyed and just kind of like standing there like watching dolphins. I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. And this is awesome. My God.
So your moment of, you were able to find like with that moment of paradise in this chaotic environment.
Yeah. And I was like, you know what, like staring at dolphins is pretty sedentary, although it's cool. That's not my life goal. Like, oh, I want to see dolphins. It's like, yeah, I want to see dolphins. Everybody wants to see dolphins. Dolphins are neat, but like just staring at them forever, no. Like the dolphins and the chaos, though, I was like, that's a good mix. Kind of dig it. I'll go online. I like this. But as far as like wildlife, like where it's at, like I'd see dolphins in the wild up close, because I've surfed in SoCal for quite a bit of time. I think what people's perception of dolphins and the reality of it is like different because once they roll up on you, you're like, that's a big, fast moving animal.
Really pounds?
Trevor's like 400 or 500 pounds.
500 pounds.
They move, and you can see that they're like intelligent. They know what's going on, and so what'll happen is sometimes, like when the wave passes, they'll jump out the back of the wave. And so a wave, when a wave passes, it's kind of like a mountain, right? Like the back end of a mountain. So they jump out of the top of the wave and they jump back out to sea. So it's like they're jumping off the tail end, the top of a 6-foot wave, and they jump 6 feet in the air. And all of a sudden you've got this dolphin that's 600-700 pounds. So it's like 10 to 15 feet in the air. And you're like, yeah, if that thing hits you, like you're done,
Do they like riding waves?
They do, and they're very effective at it. Yeah, they're very, very effective. You can see them kind of like catch up speed, catch the wave, turn a little bit sideways, and they really get cooking. So yeah, they're substantially good at riding waves. Harbor seals.
That's interesting because, we're talking to Penn State to start developing a lot of the prototypes. I'm wondering if when we get into more design work, we can start learning from these animals. The dolphins, like the ones that take waves the most efficient, right? That's what.
Well, I mean, so yeah, dolphins, killer whales, even shark bodies, and obviously like certain fish, right? Coincidentally, the rain today, right? What's the most aerodynamic shape in nature, right? And it's an obvious answer, and like, oh, I wonder what that is. And then when someone tells you it's actually a raindrop, you're like, oh. Yeah, well, of course it is.
Because it's cutting through
Because, that's exactly, like the force of air upon a totally malleable object turns into a raindrop, right? So it's no coincidence that dolphins are shaped like that. Sharks are shaped in the same way. Even small airplanes are shaped like that.
Oh, like oceans.
And so that's the shape of things to come. Yeah, we can definitely take from nature, but the thing is, we're going to design a surf catch that's going to look like a boat in appearances only. It's going to be the actual waves that propel it, and the waves are going to stand taller than the boat. So boats are designed to be propelled by engines with the props underwater, where we're going to have to design a boat to withstand, a large surge of water, and then to carry that surge and that energy forward while dragging a cable in ever decreasing amounts of power. And so the design's going to be different. It's going to look the same. It's going to operate different.
Yeah.
And so, that's that. We're looking at Penn State, though. That's going to be awesome. And they have boat building. They have everything there. Great place to test.
Nice.
So I've got another wildlife story. It's pretty good to go. I'm in this place called Scotts Creek. There's a lot of places, they call it the Red Triangle, right? And so you're a little bit kind of on edge of the Red Triangle is loosely Santa Cruz to San Francisco to the Farallon Islands, right? And Farallon Islands be kind of like the epicenter, right? There's just an enormous, huge sea lion like colony there, right? So there's just a lot of animals, and the sharks, congregate there as well to obviously feed on the seals. Anywhere kind of that triangle, even Santa Cruz proper, there's sharks, right? And so you kind of want to be aware of it.
The water temperature is good?
The water temperature is colder, right? And what I've been told is that, colder water, there's more oxygen and more life in cold water. That's why you get those king crabs up in Alaska. Don't quote me on that, but that's what I've been told. It could be wrong. But there's elephant seals there, and elephant seals are a huge animal. Seals are like the size of a large dog. Dolphins are like the size of, like kind of like a motorcycle, right? Elephant seals are arguably the size of like a Volkswagen bug, and to look at them on shore, you could probably run up and touch an elephant seal, and before it notices you're there, you can kind of run away and get out of the way, right? Like if it rolled over on you, though, you would definitely get crushed. And actually, there's a risk for younger elephant seals, when they're birthed on shore, that a bigger one will just roll right over and crush it. So that is a concern. But in the water, though, they are not slow, and they are territorial. So I was surfing this place, Scotts Creek, kind of right smack dab in the middle of the Red Triangle. And I see an elephant seal pop up like a board length, 6-7 feet from me, and pops up, and its head is as big as my chest. And it's just kind of looking at me like, what? Making like this classic seal sound. And I'm like, I'm like 17 at the time, maybe 18, maybe 16 as well, and I'm just like, I don't want anything to do with this animal. I don't know anything. It's animal, whether I'm 40, 50 years old or anything, And so I'm like, okay, like I'm out of here. And it's kind of one of the situations like, do I paddle slowly? Do I paddle fast? Do I paddle and catch a wave? Do I paddle towards where the waves are, or just paddle straight in? So I'm just kind of slowly moving towards shore with this guy in the frame. And next thing I know, I ride a little wave. So I went in for a little bit. And then right before I start the process of like kind of getting off my board and making my way to the rocks, right? I noticed that like now the elephant seal's in between me and the rocks, and I'm like, oh Jesus,
with it.
And he's kind of like, in a way, he's like, pops his head up. Now he's really mad. Now he's really making an impact. Yeah, I don't know what to do there at that point. So I kind of paddle out, kind of drifted away a little bit, and then he went underwater, and it looked like he had swam out. I didn't know, but I just started making my way into shore, and that was okay. But yeah, it was definitely something I didn't want to deal with.
A close encounter.
Close encounter, yeah.
Well, but you never, in the news, you never hear, you only hear the shark stories in the news.
In the news, you only hear the shark stories. That's correct. And, sharks they kill people. They definitely do. They definitely harm people. There's a surfer, I think 2 decades ago now, a young girl, and she lost her arm, and they did about it.
Yeah.
Bethany Hamilton, I think her name was. And so it definitely happens, but, like, we're not, I hate to say it, we're like a poor tasting cracker in the diet of a shark. They'd rather have a seal, full of meat and fat, I would say a seal is a T-bone steak, whereas we're, the free crowd you give it, not the deal. So yeah, there's that, so that's kind of funny.
This is a video for our listening, for the Wave Cloud app.
Yeah, absolutely. Andres and I have been really looking at the information that's generated by surfers wearing smartwatches in the surf sound. It seems like it's a bit of a novelty information, similar to, I would say, hey, I went jogging and I ran this fast, and then I went jogging again after a couple of weeks, and I've been jogging regularly. Now I'm going faster. And you could kind of say the same thing about, hey, I was surfing a wave and I went this fast, and then I've been surfing better and the waves are a little bit better that day, and I was able to go faster and what have you, you know, and the size of the waves and the distance and all that, right? And there's a bit of a novelty factor and a bit of curiosity, and so that's the situation. But there is a missing element of information in waves, and that is from, you know, I would use the analogy of the rainy day here, right? Like, hey, it's supposed to rain in San Diego or Indiana or Florida, wherever you may be, you know, it's going to rain. Like, it's going to rain an inch over a certain amount of time. Like, okay, so, you know, the rain passes a couple days, maybe just one day, what have you, right? And so, okay, well, did my lawn get an inch of rain? Hey, we've got buoys, and the buoys say that there's a 6-foot wave with a 12-second period, and it's going to hit the shoreline. Okay, well, we're at Ocean Beach in San Diego. Did a 6-foot wave with a 12-second period hit here? Yeah. Well, how powerful was it? It was mid-powerful. Well, how powerful was that same wave at Black's? A little bit more powerful. How was that wave at Coronado? Well, actually, Coronado has shadowing, so it never even reached because it was from the north. Mm-hmm. So in that same, you know, analogy, like, it rained. How much rain did my lawn get? Similar, hey, there was swell, ocean energy in the ocean. How much ocean energy did my beach get? And so those surfers wearing those watches gives us a glimpse, although not perfect, into the actual specific energy that might hit any exact area. And that energy is very valuable to us, those readouts, those measurements, because it allows us to look at a certain beach and say, hey, you know what? This is how much potential energy is there at a certain beach at a certain time with a certain swell conditions. Because as we fill those gaps of information, it allows us to predict how much energy, obviously we'll talk about here, wave energy converters, but in the future, how will that dictate storms? How will that dictate rising oceans? How will that dictate damage to the shore? How will that dictate erosion around jetties, erosion around natural land, formations, points, what have you? And that's a real gap in information.
So that goes into our models, into developing the wave energy system. But all that data can also be used for industry, government, other nations, island nations that need to understand their coastlines. So investors out there, what we anticipate is we can actually sell this data and license this data. We can either license the raw data or we can analyze it ourselves and license that information. But that is crucial information to people working on shorelines. So that's what we want to develop. I had a question about, so we all know there's buoys out there.
Yep.
How far are they?
You know, great answer. All depends. It all depends on what time of year it is as well. Because, you know, the Washington buoy, the Cal buoy, the Oregon buoy, the Cal buoy, they're all about, you know, anywhere from 350 to 400 miles offshore, right?
That's far.
And it is far. It is far. And they, you know, they determine when swells come in as they march down the coast, right? Now, if the, you know, Washington, Oregon, Cal buoy, they all get hit at the same time, you could say like, okay, this swell is due west. If the Washington gets hit and then a little bit later the Oregon gets hit, you know, that increase in swell, then the California one gets hit with the same swell, you can kind of say to yourself, okay, well, this is a northwest swell, and how soon they get hit, you know, what differences in swell and period they get hit with, you can tell kind of the direction, right? And then as we get closer to shore, there's a myriad of buoys, you know, up and down the coast, and you can start to tell with greater accuracy as the swell travels closer to shore, you know, what size it is, what swell it is, and all that. Those buoys are good in the wintertime. Now, in the summertime, due to the fact that Mexico is south of us, we don't get as accurate readings. We can't predict as well. Now, we can with satellites, imagery, historical readouts of what happened in the past, but we don't get that real time.
Oh, so these are just U.S. buoys?
These are just U.S. buoys. We have localized buoys, right? but, Point Loma, but it's much, much closer. And that's the one that we were reading, 2 weekends ago now when that swell came in.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one we were looking at, ad nauseum, as that hurricane swell came into Coronado.
Okay, so back to our concept, smartwatch, everyone can wear it. It's real easy. The technology, all the components are already there that we need that to read the data, like how fast you're going, where the location, all the surfing information, all the data that, much like when you're running, all that data that you create, that's the data we can use. And what we want to do is collect as much of it as possible using surfers, but eventually we'll come up with other ways to collect that data, but that's the easiest way right now that we see to collect that.
It's the easiest way for us to get the data, and the data is being used in a kind of novel fashion for just individual users. But if we compile all that data together, that'll really allow us to predict a lot of things that can be used by people in society as a whole. If we can predict damage hurricanes will have 10 years out, we could not dictate, but we could determine the safest place and types of construction to put on, coastal treaties, and where the best place to prevent damage could be, right? So there's a lot to that. But as we install the wave energy converters on the beaches in the future, we'll be taking accurate measurements as well.
Yep.
And that will increase, the amount of information that we're able to gather and then, kind of throw into the mix.
Yeah. So one last thing, we mentioned how the coast, like all the shorelines are different. That kind of reminds me, we talked about microclimates in the past, right? Like everyone knows, like San Diego is known for good weather, but everywhere, every town, every city has microclimates. The weather just behaves a little bit differently because certain geography or mountains or whatever, canyons. And coastline's the exact same way. The shoreline's the same way.
Coastline's the exact same way. Coastline's the exact same way. And it all just goes back to the problems that I'm seeing with wave energy converter companies, right? Like, you've got someone who's really, really intelligent, PhD in electrical engineering, PhD in mechanical engineering, right? Followed by 4 or 5 PhDs in environmental studies, and, take your pick, right? Just super intelligent people. Yeah, I don't have those degrees. I am, I've got an MBA, which took some work, but a majority of my life is being a former Navy SEAL. But there's one thing I understand, it's the ocean at a level of, experience that they'll never get. The other thing is that, I understand weather. I understand the plays. I understand how the weather and the waves and the wind and the swell react around certain things that are put into the ocean and, where you would go. And a lot of that comes from being a Navy SEAL. A lot of that, comes from being a sniper as well. Just being in it, right? And, like I tell my friends, every Navy SEAL becomes a amateur weatherman because, you end up spending your time outside. Once you sleep in the open with snow landing on your head, you're going to get pretty good at being a weatherman. You're not going to want to do that twice. And so that's that. So, a lot of those weather patterns, those microclimates, or I think the term is orographic in a way, right? The weather comes in, hits something, and reacts to that, and, you can know where to go.
Okay.
SB 605. Yeah, so SB 605, the initiative for California to really work on wave energy, marine energy converters, it's huge. We like it. It's going towards the governor. It just got passed by the state Senate, correct?
Yep.
Senator
Steve Padilla. Chula Vista native, San Diego, went to the same high school, Bonita Vista.
Okay.
Cool. As me. Yeah, big shout out to Senator Padilla, the folks at Alta Sea. They've been pushing for this and helping corral the wave energy industry and to help show support for this bill. I think it's big because, the state's going to start looking into what wave energy is so they can start supporting it even more. Companies like us and other companies that we're working with.
I think it's huge. I think it's important. Society as a whole needs to look at renewable energy, all renewable energy, but I think wave energy in particular because I think it holds the most potential, right? The least amount of infrastructure for the most amount of energy. I mean, that's unarguable, right? And so one thing I want to mention is that, the world does not have a limitless supply of oil, and we use oil for different things, right? We don't just use it to power our cars. We're all wearing products of oil right now. And, I'm in a car that's, 50% of it is plastic. We use oil to launch aircraft into space vehicles, right? And renewable energy has a ton of potential, but there are some things it cannot do. I cannot turn sunshine into plastics. I cannot turn wave energy into space vehicle fuel. And so I think we need to kind of look towards the future and say, listen, like we are going to need oil in the future for these certain things. So we're just using it to drive our cars, power our homes. We're kind of using it in a way that's, I think, wasteful when we could use other forms of energy. Power these items that we use every day.
Yeah. And what is California known for?
Sunshine.
And beaches, right?
And
the coastline. That's one of our biggest assets.
Sunshine and beaches.
So like Native Americans used every piece of the buffalo, right? And put everything to good use. We got to do the same thing with our coastline.
Yes. And the thing is, people say, well, I don't want to cloud my beach. I don't want to fill it with the extra items that aren't needed. But, I would say probably less than 10% of California beaches are occupied by tourists and people who go and spend time at the beach. I would say a majority of our coastline is empty.
There's room for it.
As empty as beaches in Alaska, as empty as beaches in the most desolate places in the world. And you can put structures down and you can gather an enormous amount of energy and put us way ahead of the program.
Quick thank you to Senator Steve Padilla, Alta C, Terry's team. They're doing great work. Looking forward to more. Okay, last one. TMA Blue Tech.
Yeah, TMA Blue Tech, we're excited to, kind of, I guess I wouldn't say partner with them, but, kind of fall under their umbrella. I think their initiatives are in line with what we want to do. They're excited to have support, and we are as well. And they had a conjoined effort last week where they talked about the surf industry as a whole and the efforts the surf industry is making for renewable energy, and what they have going on. And no, it was a good meeting. And, and to top that off, we had Sean Thompson come out and speak, and he's a well-spoken individual, and also a former pro surfer as well.
Is he like kind of a hero of yours or somebody you looked up to?
He definitely was a surfer that I followed in my youth. And now that I'm older, I've surfed a ton, and I've surfed the North Shore, a lot of ways that he competed at. I have a ton of respect for him because, he was about 10 years prior to some pretty large technical advancements in surfboard construction.
Cool.
And so, he was pretty much, like we have the guns of today that are modern and, shoot lots of rounds and do all sorts of things. If you want to compare surfboards now to surfboards then, he was pretty much surfing on a musket. So
Ford Escort.
Yeah, exactly. Ford Escort. Yeah. So, no, it was pretty good. Yeah, it was pretty good. It was cool talking.
South African Sean Thompson. Okay, that's cool. I learned something about that. So yeah, special thanks to Matt Klassen. Is that how you say his name?
Matt, it is now. Yeah.
Matt at TMA Blue Tech. Thanks for welcoming us to your platform, your membership, and looking forward to working with you more. And it takes a lot of people to push the blue economy, and it's going to take a lot of work, but there's a lot of great people like Matt and TMA Blue Tech putting this together.
Yeah, thank you. That's sad.